Research Station Helios burned like a metallic jewel against the crimson sky of Infernos 9, its thermal shields creating rainbow distortions in the superheated air. Inside, Station Director Zixtal adjusted her crystalline sensory nodes as she reviewed the morning's reports. The Centaurian's translucent body reflected the glow of countless monitoring screens, each displaying readings that would make most species flee in terror. "Director, the human transport vessel has entered orbit," announced Koori, the station's artificial intelligence. "Estimated arrival in 30 standard minutes." Zixtal's crystalline form vibrated with anxiety. "Remind me again why the Galactic Science Council approved this madness." According to official records, Kor responded, "Dr. Isabella Ramirez is the leading expert in extreme environment geology, with particular expertise in—" "It was rhetorical, Kor," Zixtal interrupted, watching as another geyser of liquid rock erupted outside the reinforced viewing windows. The surface temperature of Infernos 9 averaged 1200 Kelvin, hot enough to melt aluminum into a puddle. Yet somehow, the Council expected her to accommodate a flesh-and-blood human on her research team. The station's chief engineer, Vrix, slithered into the control room, his plasma-based body casting a blue glow across the walls. "The human-specific modifications are complete, Director, though I still question their necessity. Surely no carbon-based life form can function in these conditions." Before Zixtal could respond, Kor's voice filled the room again. "Transport vessel requesting emergency landing clearance." "Emergency." Zixtal's crystalline structure pulsed with alarm. "What's wrong?" "Unknown. The pilot reports the human passenger insisted on immediate landing, citing perfect sampling conditions. The transport touched down with practiced precision on the station's landing pad." Zixtal and Vrix watched through the monitoring screens as the airlock cycled. They expected to see a heavily armored figure emerge from the ship. Instead, Dr. Isabella Ramirez stepped out wearing what appeared to be a simple environmental suit no thicker than standard shipboard clothing. Her dark hair was tied back in a practical knot, and she carried a pack of equipment that looked suspiciously ordinary. "That's impossible," Vrix whispered, his plasma form fluctuating with disbelief. "The external temperature would." "Amazing." Dr. Ramirez's voice came through the comm system, filled with enthusiasm. "Those lava flows are absolutely gorgeous. The crystallization patterns are unlike anything I've seen on Earth." She actually walked, across the landing pad, her boots leaving footprints in the heat-resistant coating. Zixtal activated the external speakers. "Dr. Ramirez, please proceed to the emergency shelter immediately. Your suit cannot possibly—" "Oh, this old thing." Ramirez looked down at her outfit. "It's just a standard thermal weave. We used them for volcano research back home. Speaking of which," she pulled out what looked like a simple metal rod and approached the edge of the landing pad. "Dr. Ramirez." Zixtal's voice rose in pitch. "That area is not safe for—" The human scientist casually extended her sampling rod into a nearby lava flow. "Fascinating. The viscosity is much lower than Earth's basaltic flows. The silicon content must be—" "Hold on. Let me get a closer reading." Vrix's plasma form nearly destabilized as they watched Ramirez kneel at the edge of the pad, her face mere meters from liquid rock. "Director, should I activate the emergency extraction protocols?" Zixtal could only stare as the human pulled out more instruments, chattering excitedly about mineral compositions and flow patterns. I mean, Kor, what's her body temperature reading?" Dr. Ramirez's core temperature shows only a 2-degree elevation from human standard. Her epidermis is actively cooling through evaporative processes. "Through what?" "I believe the humans call it sweating," Kor explained. "It's quite efficient, actually." Ramirez finally stood, carefully storing her samples in a containment field. "Sorry about the dramatic entrance, but that pyroclastic flow was too perfect to pass up. I'm Isabella Ramirez, but please call me Bella. Now, where can I set up my lab?" I brought some fascinating new heat-resistant polymers I think you'll love to study. As the human strode toward the airlock, still talking animatedly about research possibilities, Zixtal turned to Vrix. Did we just watch a carbon-based life form casually collect samples from liquid rock? Indeed, Vrix replied, his plasma form still flickering with shock. Director, I believe we may need to recalibrate our definition of impossible. The first day of Earth's contribution to the Infernos 9 research station had begun. None of them, least of all Zixtal, could have predicted how this Deathworlder would revolutionize their understanding of not just geology, but the very limits of life itself. 2 standard weeks after Dr. Ramirez's arrival, Station Director Zixtal found herself staring at yet another impossible sight. The human scientist stood in the main lab, barefoot, with her feet submerged in what appeared to be a container of molten metal. The nerve endings in human feet are perfect for testing thermal conductivity, Bella explained, wiggling her toes. These new ceramics we're developing should be able to handle much higher temperatures than your current shields. But your epidermis, Vrix hummed from his containment field, where he monitored the experiments. How is it not combusting? Calluses, Bella replied cheerfully. Plus, humans evolved running on hot savanna ground. Our feet are pretty tough. The station suddenly shuddered violently, throwing equipment across the lab. Warning lights flashed as Core's voice filled the chamber. Critical failure in primary cooling system. Magma chamber pressure exceeding safety parameters. Zixtal's crystalline form pulsed red with alarm. Status report. The main coolant feed to the thermal shield generators has ruptured. Core responded. Secondary systems unable to compensate. Shield failure imminent in 15 minutes. Vrix's plasma form swirled anxiously. The backup controls are in Junction 7, but the corridor temperature is already at 1500 Kelvin. Even our maintenance drones would melt. Bella pulled her feet from the testing tank, quickly scanning the station schematics. Junction 7 is only 300 meters through the maintenance tunnel, right? Correct, but Zixtal froze as understanding dawned. Dr. Ramirez, no. Even for a human, that's suicide. I've walked through worse on Kilauea, Bella said, already stripping down to her thermal undersuit. How long will the emergency shields hold in the tunnel? 3 minutes at most, Core calculated. After that, ambient temperature will exceed 1400 Kelvin. Perfect. That's about the same as a good lava flow. Bella grabbed a small pack of tools. I only need 5 minutes. This is beyond reckless. Zixtal vibrated with concern. As station director, I cannot authorize. With all due respect. Director, Bella interrupted, her eyes showing that peculiar human intensity that still unnerved Zixtal. You're not authorizing anything. I'm informing you of my decision. She paused at the lab door. If I'm not back in 10 minutes, tell the council that humans really can be quite rational. Sometimes we just choose not to be. Before anyone could respond, Bella sprinted into the superheated corridor. The station's monitoring systems tracked her progress as she ran through increasingly hostile conditions. At the 2-minute mark, the emergency shields failed. External temperature now at 1450 Kelvin. Core announced. Dr. Ramirez's epidermal temperature approaching human pain threshold. Zixtal watched in horror as the human's vital signs spiked. She has to turn back. No species can endure. Approaching Junction 7, Bella's voice came through the comm, strained but determined. The floor's a bit toasty. Reminds me of beach volleyball in Phoenix. A bit toasty, Vrix exclaimed. The metal is literally glowing. Yeah, that's why I left my boots behind. Bare feet conduct heat better, more surface contact for cooling. There was a grunt of effort. Accessing the backup controls now. Core, ready for reset sequence. Ready, Dr. Ramirez. Though I feel compelled to note that your current situation violates 73 separate safety protocols. Only 73. Bella's laugh turned into a hiss of pain. Okay, initiating reset in 3, 2, 1. The station hummed as power cycled through the systems. Slowly, blissfully, the temperature began to drop. Primary cooling restored. Core announced. Shield generators returning to nominal function. Though I feel obligated to report that Dr. Ramirez's return path still exceeds safe parameters for carbon-based life. Already on my way back, Bella replied. Though I might need some ice for my feet. And maybe a drink. Do we have any of that Centaurian frost wine left? 10 minutes later, Bella sat in the medical bay while the autodoc treated her blistered feet. Zixtal and Fricks hovered nearby, still processing what they'd witnessed. You deliberately expose yourself to temperatures that would vaporize most species, Zixtal said slowly, because you calculated you could survive long enough to reach the controls. Pretty much. Bella winced as the autodoc applied healing gel. Though I'll admit, it was a bit warmer than I expected. Might need to modify our ceramic formula to account for that. Modify the Vrix's plasma form fluctuated with disbelief. You're already thinking about the research. Of course. This was perfect field testing data. The human body's heat resistance combined with our new materials. Her eyes lit up with that unsettling enthusiasm. Director, I think we just found our solution for the deep mantle probes. Zixtal's crystalline form cycled through several colors before settling on a bemused purple. Dr. Ramirez, I am beginning to understand why your species has such a unique reputation in the galaxy. Oh. Bella grinned as she flexed her healing feet. And here I thought I was being particularly cautious today. Cautious, Vrix and Zixtal exclaimed simultaneously. Well, yeah. Bella's grin widened. I mean, I didn't even bring any sampling equipment with me this time. As the human scientist launched into an excited discussion about improving their heat-resistant materials based on her brief walk, Zixtal made a mental note to update the station's safety protocols. Again, though she was beginning to suspect that no protocol in the galaxy could fully account for human ingenuity, or their peculiar definition of reasonable risk. The storm that burns. The warning came 3 days after the cooling system incident. Core's usually calm voice carried an edge of urgency. Massive plasma storm approaching. Estimated impact in 6 hours. Bella looked up from her workbench, where she'd been testing new ceramic compounds. How massive are we talking? Unprecedented, Zixtal answered, her crystalline form pulsing with worried crimson lights. The storm will raise surface temperatures to over 2,000 Kelvin. Even with full shields, the station cannot withstand such conditions. The evacuation ships are already en route, Vrix added, his plasma form swirling anxiously. We must abandon the station. Bella stared at the storm visualization, her eyes narrowing with that particular human expression that had come to worry her alien colleagues. What if we didn't? Dr. Ramirez, Zixtal began, even you cannot. Look at these readings. Bella pulled up her latest test results. The new ceramic compound we developed, based on Earth's traditional clay firing techniques. It's holding stable at 2,500 Kelvin in the lab. But scaling it up to protect the entire station. Vrix started. We don't need to. Bella's fingers flew across the holographic interface. We just need to protect the shield generators themselves. A targeted application, combined with the station's existing defenses. She looked up, eyes bright with challenge. We can ride out the storm. What followed was a blur of activity that would later become legendary in galactic scientific circles. Human and alien worked side by side, racing against time to implement what Vrix called beautifully insane human engineering. They coated critical systems with the new ceramic, reinforced power conduits, and rigged emergency cooling systems that borrowed principles from human sweat glands. When the storm hit, it came with apocalyptic fury. The sky turned to fire, and the ground itself seemed to melt. But inside Station Helios, a human scientist sat calmly monitoring systems while drinking what she called iced tea. Remarkable. Zixtal observed as another wave of plasma washed over their shields. Your species truly evolved in conditions like this. Oh no, Bella laughed. Earth is much cooler. We just really enjoy figuring out how to survive in places we probably shouldn't. Trial by fire. The Galactic Science Council's emergency session was broadcast across 17 systems. On the main display, Bella stood calmly before the assembled dignitaries, her casual stance a sharp contrast to the formal proceedings. Dr. Ramirez, the chief counselor's telepathic voice resonated through the chamber. You violated 73 safety protocols, exposed yourself to lethal conditions, and modified crucial station equipment without proper authorization. Yes, Bella agreed cheerfully. And in doing so, we saved a research station worth billions of credits, preserved years of invaluable data, and developed new heat-resistant materials that could revolutionize stellar engineering. That's not the point. Another counselor began. With respect, Bella interrupted. That's exactly the point. Humanity doesn't just survive extreme conditions. We adapt, we innovate, we thrive. Yes, we take risks, but calculated ones, based on understanding our own capabilities. The chamber erupted in argument, but fell silent as Corey's urgent message cut through. Priority alert. Massive tectonic activity detected beneath Station Helios. Magma chamber showing signs of imminent catastrophic failure. Part 5. Rising from the ashes. The final crisis came without warning. Deep beneath Station Helios, planetary forces were building toward disaster. The magma chamber that powered their research was becoming a ticking bomb. Conventional wisdom says we evacuate, Bella stated, looking at the assembled team. But conventional wisdom didn't account for human stubbornness and alien genius working together. What followed would be studied in scientific academies for generations. Humans and aliens, combining their unique perspectives and capabilities, engineered a solution that seemed to defy physics itself. They drilled into the planet's crust using machines protected by their new ceramics, redirected magma flows using principles borrowed from Earth's plate tectonics, and stabilized the chamber using techniques that made both human and alien engineers question their understanding of impossible. The operation required someone to manually adjust the flow regulators in conditions that would vaporize most known materials. To no one's surprise, Bella volunteered. You know, she said, checking her modified heat suit, there's an old Earth saying, where there's a will, there's a way. That makes no logical sense, Vrix observed. Most human sayings don't, Bella grinned. That's kind of our thing. Hours later, as the crisis passed and the station's systems returned to normal, Director Zixtal found Bella in the observation dome, watching the lava flows with their now familiar patterns. The Council has reviewed our latest reports, Zixtal announced. They're establishing a new research division, Extreme Environment Engineering. They want you to lead it. They want a human in charge of a galactic research division. Bella raised an eyebrow. No, Zixtal's crystalline form shimmered with what Bella had learned was amusement. They want this human. The one who taught us that sometimes the most logical solution is to ignore logic entirely. Bella laughed. Just wait until they meet the rest of humanity. We're all a bit crazy. It's how we survived Earth long enough to reach the stars. As they watched another sunrise on Infernos 9, the human and alien stood in comfortable silence, representatives of vastly different species united by the pursuit of knowledge and the understanding that sometimes the most remarkable discoveries come from daring to attempt the impossible. You know, Bella said thoughtfully, I've been thinking about exploring those deep magma vents on the southern continent. Zixtal's crystalline form flickered with resignation and amusement. The adventure, it seemed, was far from over.